Well, good evening. We have the Milliken Housing Authority here tonight to speak to you. Are we having anybody from other than Bill by Zoom?
I believe just Bill by Zoom. Loveland Housing was going to join us, but there was a family emergency and they can't.
Okay, all right. And so anyway, I will turn it over to Kelly and we'll go from there.
We do have a new board member. Can we just go around the room and introduce ourselves?
Sure.
That would
That's
be
a good idea.
You want me to start?
Sure.
I'm Kelly Matthews. I'm the chair of the Milliken Housing Authority.
Oh, they know me.
Amanda
doesn't. Oh. This is Lois Ann Honorado. Patty York in the back. Hi, say hi, Patty.
I'm just observing.
Okay.
I'm Peter Cohen. I'm on the house, Milliken Housing.
Manuel, new trustee. Nicole Rodriguez, trustee. Elizabeth Austin, mayor.
Derek Granquist, trustee.
Leave on early, Mayor Pro Tem.
Peggy Wakeman, trustee. Cheryl Powell, town administrator. And we have Bill Selby via Zoom.
Hi, Bill. We can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. Hello.
Hello.
Everybody.
Okay, now we're all friendly. Please
we're all-
proceed.
Yay. I'm just here to just give the board a few notes of information of what's kind of going on with the Milliken Housing Authority right now. We have sort of a big capital event. Hopefully you got some information in your work packets that showed kind of the timeline and process that we're going through, but mostly this will just be informational so you guys know what we're dealing with as the board of the Milliken Housing Authority. And there are some things in the future that will also affect relationship with the town that we'll need to come to the town for, and I just don't want those things to be a surprise. So this is just to sort of give you a heads up. Primarily, this is about Dove Valley, which if you don't know Dove Valley, it is located on the corner of Quintine and Webb County Road 46. It was created in 2006 and is an age-restricted community that provides affordable housing to Milliken seniors, age 55 plus, that are between 40 and 60% of the area median income. It is a great little housing community, very affordable. Those units are always full. They were built very, very well, and they all have solar. They're individual houses. They're really designed well, and they've been a very good part of this community for quite a while. The community itself consists of 10 two-bedroom unit homes and 10 one-bedroom duplex homes, and each has a one-car attached garage, for those that aren't familiar with Dove Valley. The Dove Valley is currently managed by the Loveland Housing Authority, and it is owned, the property itself is owned in an LLLP partnership between the Town of Milliken Housing Authority, the Loveland Housing Authority, and Boston Financial, who was our investor when it was first developed. The Dove Valley partnership project would not have come to fruition without that partnership and without the help of the Loveland Housing Authority, for sure. They've done a lot of good work for us. And we're sort of coming up to the end of the Boston Financial 15-year compliance period, where they will be exiting our partnership, and they will need to exit prior to December 31st of this year. And the way the partnership currently stands, the Town of Milliken Housing Authority owns 0.5% of Dove Valley. The Loveland Housing Authority owns 0.5%, and Boston Financial owns 99%. So when Boston Financial leaves, their 99% reverts to the Milliken Housing Authority. And then the Loveland Housing Authority will still have 0.5%. So we'll have 99.5 and Loveland will have 0.5. There are several actions that we as a housing authority and the Loveland Housing Authority have to take leading up to that exit. And in your work packets, you'll see just an outline of the upcoming capital event that was put together by the Loveland Housing Authority for us, because they've gone through this process with several other investors and several other communities. They're very, very familiar with the process. And us as a small town housing authority, we're not so familiar with this process. Like, we know nothing, honestly. So they recommend that we start our legal process in October of this year, with our exit completing by December 31st. And there are just a little recap of the capital event. The Dove Valley Partnership account will pay for Boston Financial's tax liabilities, capital accounts, legal fees for the Milliken Housing Authority and for Boston Financial, an asset management fee, and the total cost of the exit is projected to be less than $25,000, and that is covered by the account that's already there, that Dove Valley has that in their budget. And then we, as a board, have already discussed and voted and agreed to hire the same attorney that handled the origination of the partnership. That is Paul Smith and Partners. They have just completed a similar exit with Loveland Housing. And once that Boston Financial exit is complete, we'll, like I said, we'll own 99.5%. LHA will own 0.5%. And then next year in 2022, we will need to decide as a board what to do with the remaining partnership between us and Loveland Housing Authority. That partnership can continue, or Loveland Housing will sell their 0.5% ownership of Dove Valley back to the Milliken Housing Authority for $1. That's the agreement that we've always had. And then Milliken Housing would own Dove Valley 100%. Yes.
Is there any benefit to having Loveland continue in the partnership, or is it better to have it all under Milliken Housing Authority?
From the discussion that we've had with Loveland Housing, it's better ultimately for Milliken to own it 100%. Loveland Housing can and will continue to manage the property, because they do the property management for us as well. They've done an excellent job of that. And they can continue doing the management even when they exit the partnership.
I see.
So that would sort of be the next phase. We'll get Boston Financial exited this year, and then next year we'll focus probably on exiting Loveland Housing.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Yeah. Then when Loveland Housing exits, there is some soft debt on the property currently. It's approximately $2 million. And there is hard debt on the property, $634,000. When Loveland Housing exits, the hard debt would need to be refinanced. And that's one of the things that we would have to really look at how to accomplish at that point. But the $2 million soft debt goes away. Most of that soft debt was grants that were given to the Milliken Housing Authority, and the Milliken Housing Authority gave that grant money to the development. And so when we now own it 100%, basically it's money that we gave to ourselves. And so that 2 million dissolves. It's not really a debt, but there is a loan of hard debt of $634,000.
And who owns that debt?
The hard debt
Yeah, hard debt.
is, just real quick. The hard
Kelly,
debt,
right now, the partnership owns it,
the partnership owns the hard debt.
but it will revert to us. It will revert to us. It is a 45-year loan, Mayor, that, as Kelly says, we'll have the option to refinance or not. But it's still out there, and it will become ours.
Okay.
Right,
see.
Kelly?
I don't have exactly who. I'll find out though.
So I
I have
heard
it in the
you,
financials.
sorry, go ahead.
Kelly, just a quick question, because last I knew, about 3 or 4 years ago, the Loveland Housing Authority was doing all the administrative piece of that. So if
Yes.
Milliken takes over, do you guys have manpower to maintain doing the administrative piece of it, as far as the bills,
As far as the
applications?
property management, we do not. No, we do not. And we have discussed that as a board, and as a board, our general consensus is that we would prefer Loveland Housing to continue doing the property management side of it, because we are not equipped to do that at this time, at any rate.
Yes, you had mentioned that the loan was was an option, but I think you were mentioning that if Loveland steps out, it's a requirement. Am I understanding that
Right.
correctly?
What Loveland Housing did tell us was that the hard debt would need to be refinanced if Loveland Housing exits the partnership,
Okay.
because the loan is to the partnership and there would no longer be a partnership.
I see.
So that would have to be refinanced at that
But
point.
Boston leaving the partnership does not initiate a
A
restructuring.
refinance, no, it does not. No, only if the partnership completely dissolves, from what I understand.
Does Boston have any particular motivation in departing the partnership, or is it just end of term?
I believe the majority of their motivation for leaving is there's no longer a benefit for them to be in it.
Okay.
They've received this 15 years that
Right.
they've been a partner has been recouped by them in form of tax credits and things like that. And those have now run out. And so there's no benefit for them to continue to be in it. So, and that's generally the way these developments are structured, is for that investor to get out when their time's up.
Mhm.
There's no benefit at all for them to continue to be in it. They're not making any money off of it. They're not getting any more credit for it. So they move on to other projects. Let's see. The Loveland Housing Authority has said in their mind, it is ultimately best, in their best interest and ours, for them to exit. And that will occur sometime next year. And one last thing about Dove Valley, there is some good news for Dove Valley's income. Along with this exit, sort of the timing happened at the same time. There is solar on every unit, and that was a solar contract with Solaris. And there were rec credit funds from Excel that will all expire this August. And once those expire, we will no longer have to make payments on those contracts and that credit fund. And so that will equate to approximately $17,250 annually will be able to be retained in the Dove Valley budget. And we can use those funds to maintain and do improvements on the property that are needed now that it's over 15 years old. It's starting to need, they're getting new roofs. We've been doing painting projects through the year, ground maintenance projects through the year, replacement of carpet and appliances are starting to get older and things like that. So we're getting some extra money in those funds.
Nice. Okay.
So for the town board, as far as the exit goes, there's not really anything to require of you. We just wanted you to know that we're in the middle of this big exit. We would be hiring an attorney. The partnership hires the attorney and pays those attorney fees, and then we'll be exiting by the end of the year. And then next year, when we do have to do the dissolving of the remainder of the partnership, we may be coming before the board because we will have to do some further research as to how we refinance that debt, the hard debt that remains when we dissolve that partnership, because we will need some backing or guarantee. That's one thing that Loveland Housing is able to do with that financing, is that they have essentially the bankroll to guarantee those funds, and Milliken Housing just doesn't. So
Do they take into account the equity that's already built into Dove Valley?
when they do the refinance,
Refinancing.
yes, but I did, we had questions for them regarding the property value has to be valued as affordable housing value. It wouldn't be valued as regular property. So yeah, so you couldn't count it as residential market value. It would be counted only as affordable housing value, which is significantly lower. But I still think plenty of room in there to do the financing that we would need. Any other questions about
Sounds like you're on top of it.
Yes.
Do the warrants continue to remain the property? The warrants,
Warrants.
section 8?
Oh, yes, yes, those have to continue. That's a very good question. All of that has to continue with the property through the 40-year term. There's a government subsidy on the current loan that's a 40-year term, and we can't change that affordability. There's 25 more years of the LURA, which means that we have to maintain compliance with the affordability factor of the development for another 25 years. So yes, it does have to remain affordable housing. Okay, yes.
So I've heard that you want to keep the Loveland Housing Authority on as far as the management of things, but then I'm hearing also that we're looking within a year to remove them.
Remove them from the partnership.
So then you would, so Milliken Housing Authority would then own it.
Mhm.
Would you then contract
And then
Loveland Housing Authority to
Contract
continue doing
Loveland
the-
Housing to do the project management.
is-
And they do get an administration fee for that management now and have always.
Okay,
And that would continue.
okay.
So they still be taking people on the wait list as well, or Milliken? I'm just asking because mom is looking at going there and she was speaking to the Loveland Housing Authority and they were extremely rude
Oh, no.
and wouldn't take any information. So I'm just
Okay.
curious who would be handling that piece.
It would be Loveland Housing. And I would love to talk with you about that after and we'll get something resolved.
I got one question. How do you get the affordable housing status?
You know, Bill? I know that happened in development.
Because Milligan is no longer a low income community. And I thought that some of that, getting affordable status had to deal with, being the low income community.
That word.
It was
You
developed.
know anything about that, Bill?
Yeah, I do. When we went to do Dove Valley, Weld County very generously offered, I believe it was 8 warrants for affordable housing, and the remainder of the units were to be reasonably affordable. Maybe not necessarily down to the point of the Section 8, but not up to where other places are.
So the Section 8 qualifies as affordable. Okay.
Section 8 is definitely
That's all I need to
affordable
know.
housing.
I'm just curious whether we're gonna be able to qualify for it.
I'm sorry?
I was just curious if we were gonna be able to qualify for it.
We don't have to qualify, it's the tenants that qualify.
Mhm.
Mhm. We're good, we're good.
I'm writing notes. So I can ask Loveland Housing to clarify.
I can't remember if it was 8 or 10. Do you? Warrants that we got? Huh?
I think it was just 8.
That's kind of what I was remembering.
I believe that 8 of them are specifically Weld County Section 8 units. And then the remainder, I don't have those notes with me, so I don't want to quote numbers, but I know the remainder are a mixture of different affordability levels. So,
Other questions?
Okay, I have questions, but I want to know if you're thinking about doing any expansion,
expansion of Dove
Dove
Valley.
Valley, or if you have any other projects.
Right now, we have been speaking with Habitat. There's no time availability on their side to do anything this year as far as another Habitat project. We are very focused on getting through this exit, which will take us pretty much to the remainder of this year. As a board, we have discussed doing more community involvement as far as helping people to find those resources for more affordable housing, doing some workshops, maybe some credit building workshops, things like that, to get people more familiar of the resources that they have to find help. within the community. We have discussed potentially looking at critical repair programs to help people that are already in their homes but maybe can't afford to do the repairs needed for their homes to help them stay there and get those things, working. As far as a build project right now, definitely not this year. After we get through, if Loveland, it's definitely on the long-term plan to hopefully find another project that we could do, a multi-unit project that we could do here in Milliken, that is affordable, not necessarily for seniors, but affordable for anyone. But that is definitely long-term, and we would most likely need to have that 100% interest in Dove Valley in order to leverage that property to start further development.
One of the things is, Dove Valley is still individual homes, even though they're attached. And some people, that's fine, but the next level up is where they need some assistance. They don't need full assistance, but some assistance. Is there any opportunity for you to engage in sort of an apartment type assisted living facility?
I don't think as a board we've really discussed any type of assisted living, but we have talked about potentially the next project being some type of an apartment or multi-unit, townhouse condo type project where we could have more units in it at an affordable level. But I don't think we've ever specifically spoken about an assisted living type facility.
Because, there's a lot of people that are long-term residents of the community, been here all their lives. They really don't want to go to another town to go to assisted living.
Right.
So that's why
Understandable.
I thought I'd bring it up.
I'll definitely put it on and we can discuss it at our next.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions about our exit in Dove Valley that I can answer? The only other thing that I had, and this is super quick, is this is one of those things that, so I came onto the board about 3 years ago, and this board has definitely been around for a very long time. And back in the very beginning, we found with some research that the Milliken Housing Authority had some bylaws created in 2009, I believe, was the first one we could find from some research. And then in 2018, there was a board review with some suggested changes to the bylaws, but those were never actually submitted to the town or drafted officially by an attorney. They were just kind of handwritten notes on an old set of copy of a copy of a copy of bylaws. And so none of the current board members were actually involved in the process of creating those bylaws. So we have taken some time to sort of review them. They're definitely outdated. There's a lot of things in there that don't apply anymore. The meeting place is different. The meeting time is different. Little and mostly administrative changes need to happen in those bylaws. And while we had your attention, we just wanted to ask, because we weren't really sure if the town of Milliken needs to approve any of our suggested changes before or after we hire an attorney to draft them officially and submit them. Because we just didn't know the answer.
Do you have to hire an attorney to?
And that, I guess that would be another question, is do we have to? They did previously on the original ones. Or can the town attorney do that? Because there's some I don't know, it's not really misunderstanding, but we're not really sure. Is the Milliken Housing Authority the town of Milliken, but a section of it, or is the Milliken Housing Authority a separate entity? Meaning, could we use the town attorney to draft those, or do we have to hire an attorney to draft?
Probably you have to hire your own attorney since you're a separate entity.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be my question.
And we just don't know. So I guess that's our,
We can certainly look into it.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my recollection is that the housing authority is a separate body, but it's kind of dependent. And so I'm thinking you might be able to go out of our office, but I wouldn't guarantee that. Yeah.
Okay, that would be helpful. And so, I mean, we just, like I said, mostly administrative changes and corrections to just bring them into 2021. And we just weren't sure what order we should be doing things in. We didn't want to hire an attorney if we didn't need to, and we didn't want to, you know, make changes that should have been reviewed and approved by your board before we did that.
Yeah, contact me and then we'll work with Matt to see.
Who should and where we should do it. Okay. And then at that same time that we were discovering all of this, we did find a letter from Clark Williams and Matsunaka in Loveland, where they submitted our bylaws at that time in 2009 to the Colorado Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State certified the Town of Milliken Housing Authority as an officially registered nonprofit corporation. And that was in 2009. And since that time, nobody really even knew about this. Tammy kind of discovered them on the state website. And so we don't know if that needs to be done again because it expired in 2012 and has never been redone. And so if it does need to be redone, same question, who redoes it?
We'll find out.
Okay.
Okay, good catch. Good catch, Tammy.
So thanks for finding that for us. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
So how are things flowing in the Milliken Housing Authority?
I think
Seems like you're
doing
moving right
well.
along.
We are definitely searching out new members. We had a couple come on, but we lost a couple as well. So we're still at 5, and we really would like to be at 9.
So you've got 4.
We've got 4
I see you
openings.
still got 8.
We
You
still
hung in
have
there.
Pete.
Good job. Okay.
So Aaron Becker, had come to the board and received approval and wasn't able to make it to a couple of meetings and sent me a letter of resignation.
Okay.
So he's no longer on the board. And then Leanne Larson has retired.
Mhm.
So we definitely need, so we gained a couple, but we lost a couple.
Might I suggest that you post a notice on our new coffee shop bulletin board?
Yes.
Okay, there's a lot of traffic in there. Okay, and you make a catchy little bright yellow notification that you are accepting applications, you might actually generate some interest.
Perfect. And we put it in the Milliken, the newsletter that goes out with the water bill. We put it in there a couple times and we plan to put that in every month until we get enough people coming, because that does generate some inquiries as well.
Okay.
So we're actively recruiting.
All right.
For new members.
That works.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can we put that on the town website? Sure. Is it on the town website? Yeah, okay.
I'll let you know. I'm sure I'll talk to you.
Okay, Gina.
Next one, George Hall.
I'm geared up. I'm just geared up as I
Yeah.
I can see everybody.
Yeah.
You're done? Good? Yeah, just taking it easy.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Somebody ginger.
Oh.
Or anywhere, step up.
Derek, you got.
But later to go to get my box.
And I don't think that beer really gonna get you well.
You did.
You know, you're. You still have
Really? We had to get special delivery? Yeah, Tammy? Where is she?
Yes, ma'am, what did you need?
Are you ready for us?
Yeah.
There's your recycle, reuse.
This side, sorry.
This is you.
I apologize for my hair while I was on track, so. Sometime there's.
All right.
Oh, you do? Okay. He knows what to do.
Describe it. So, yes.
That's what I so, yeah.
Alrighty. Everybody set?
We should maybe have Michael Everest. Yeah.
What?
Michael Everest from the school district.
I think I see him, our CFO. He may be.
I think that's about it. Is there?
Yep, there he is.
Sure. Now or one more?
You don't have to wear a mask. You know.
What?
I just watched your grandson. He's having a good day at the Greeley Championships.
Good for him.
Looking good.
Unfortunately, Greeley Tribune never publishes anything having to do with university.
Oh, I know. Well, unless it happens at state. Then
Is that
even
him?
then, it's-
Of course, because he looks lost. Hey. Okay. Welcome to our work session. We'll go around first and introduce ourselves. You want to start?
Sure. My name is Michael Wales. I'm the president of the 195J Board of Education.
Nate Sasano, I'm one of the directors of the Board of Education.
Jim Scott, I'm the treasurer for Wells RE5J.
Jeff Chamberlain, I'm the owner's rep for the Wells RE5J.
I'm Sarah Hall, I'm the school board secretary for the RE5J district.
I'm Michael Everett. I'm the CFO for Wells RE5J.
Linda Biesner, trustee.
Amanda Long, trustee. Nicole Rodriguez, trustee.
Elizabeth Austin, mayor.
Derek Rasmus, trustee.
Leron Early, Mayor Pro Tem.
David Wakeman, vice president of school board, trustee of.
How can we help you today?
Well, so we understand there are some questions about the current intergovernmental agreement we have between the school district and the board of trustees and board of town Milliken as far as cash in lieu for new school buildings, land acquisitions. And so I know there was a core request for the past payments or past use of that money. And so we just want to try to maybe answer some of the questions if you have any, and talk about how we might move forward with some changes to the IGA if that's what the town board would desire.
So I will tell you, yes, we put in the core request. We hadn't seen a lot of spending in town. We were pretty concerned. Very upset with what we got back. And we fully recognize that, you know, most of you were not on the board at the time of the spending. That doesn't change how the funds were spent though. And from 2004 to present, we're talking about $911,000 and $195,000 is what's left of Milliken's contributions. And the majority of those funds were spent in Johnstown. So I'm asking you point blank, do you understand why we're upset? Because we don't know if you understand when we see how the cash in lieu is spent, supporting a lot of schools in Johnstown, and then the bond money, where out of $149 million, 96% is being spent in Johnstown. And the commercial development around the school, high school, all of that sales tax will go to Johnstown, where our citizens are paying for at least 1/3 of that bond. It seems like Milliken is getting on the shorter end of the stick as we go. First, the high school is going to be in Johnstown, then you're going to pull Milliken Middle School out of Milliken. And then at the last board meeting, I hear you're going to bus elementary kids over to Pioneer or Elwell, depending upon what you decide on. It's like our schools are diminishing in this town. So when new people come here to buy a house, they ask, where are my kids going to school? We're busing them that way. And our tax money is going that way. So do you understand or not?
Absolutely. As far as the cash in lieu spending, you know, and you're right. I don't think very many people on this side of the table were part of the board when that happened. And I'm not offering that as an excuse. We've had some discussions in the board. We've had some discussions with our owner's rep. And one of the things that we really want to do in regards to the cash in lieu is right now we don't have a policy. We don't have a board policy. We're a policy governance model. So everything we do is by policy. And so we want to develop a policy that will outline how that money would be spent, how that money would be used. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Chamberlain because he can talk a little bit more about that. But he can also talk about, one of the things that this district does and this board has worked on is to create a master plan for facilities in this district. And that master plan does include new construction.
Well, I'm a little confused. You don't have a policy, but Leslie's email to me was very clear in her thoughts on how the money was being spent. As a matter of fact, it was her opinion that I was trying to breach their joint agreement. I'd like to know how that accusation comes about, because I don't think Milliken has breached anything. As a matter of fact, I think we were pretty clear on where the breach occurred.
And at this time, I would say that Superintendent Arnold does not speak for the Board of Education.
I would hope not. Because it seems to be the way when I got this email, that was my very first impression. It's who's running the board, Leslie, or are you guys running?
No, I understand. But let me have Jeff talk a little bit about the master plan and the ideas we do have around a cash in lieu policy.
Okay, before you start, whose idea was it to put a bus depot in Milliken? That conversation with Brett Hall? Didn't you call Brett Hall and ask about a bus garage on property down here, south of 46?
Yes, it was actually part of the master plan on the bond. Where we had a middle school
Mhm.
being built here in Milliken that went to the voters in 2019. So if you remember, there was a middle school at 37 acres, and then there was land dedicated for a bus barn transportation facility associated with that.
Okay.
And so following the bond on this last round, we'll continue to ask Mr. Hall and others, specifically Mr. Hall, not others, if he would continue to have land dedicated for future school sites.
Well, the way he seemed to interpret that from his conversation with you is you thought he was going to donate that property. He was a bit offended, is what I'm getting to.
I'm sorry if I offended him. He
Well, that's
offered-
between you and him.
Yes, I guess so.
Okay. Please continue.
I guess specific question is the master plan, to kind of relay on the master plan, the district looked at overall demographics, growth, existing facility conditions, and looked at how those facilities needed to be upgraded and where we could leverage funds and also capture grants to match going forward. That resulted in a bond proposal that went in front of the voters in 2019. That proposal actually had a larger percentage of dollars, not that they were focused on where dollars were going, but looking at the solution of a middle school here in Milliken. That vote didn't pass within the community, but that master plan and that component has still always been part. That phased master plan, which is looking out over the next 20 years on facility needs and growth, shows improvements across all of our buildings and also planning on new facilities as those things go forward. The cornerstone of the bond in 2019 was a new middle school. That didn't pass by 88 votes, I believe. The feedback we got from the community as we went back out to see what the needs and what they would support was a high school. So that became the proposal that's going forward, or that passed here in 2020. But there is still the need for all of the buildings to continue to get updated and renovated and eventually replaced. The bond itself, as it exists today, and exists tomorrow, has targeted renovation at Milliken Middle School, Milliken Elementary, Pioneer Ridge. Roosevelt High School is a conversion into a middle school and a new high school. Site selection is a whole different conversation, but it was an analytical discussion that the board went through multiple factors to determine where they felt the best value for the high school would be. Specific to what's happening now with the upcoming bond, the projects that are identified for Milliken, is that there is roughly $5.5 million in renovation that is targeted for Milliken Elementary School. We've already secured about $1,625,000 in grants for improvements that have happened at Milliken Elementary. And we're submitting next week on a emergency grant process that's been opened up by the BEST program for another approximately $1.25 million for Milliken Elementary. The idea behind the bond and the master plan is to take the dollars that have been promised and leverage them with any grants or any other opportunities or partnerships to be able to accomplish more. What we know with our bond, like any other municipality or any other agency, is that our needs exceed our available funds. And so we're looking at a strategic plan that goes forward with that. Cash in lieu is a mechanism for helping to identify land opportunities and for master planning. That's how I've always seen it used. I'm not sure how it has been used here in the past, but looking through agreements of other communities and districts, it's always been about what do we need to do to help make sure the development pays its way forward for securing new school sites and for preparing for that future element. We've been very lucky within the RE5J district in that we actually haven't had to pay for land for a school site. I'm not sure if we've had to pay for land for a school site. The land for the high school, whether has been donated and was offered to be donated. When we were looking at the bond in 2019, the middle school land was being offered as donated. So that offset has really gone, that's what cash in lieu should be used for.
Correct. And so I think you can understand we are surprised at finding out it was used to improve Roosevelt Athletic Field, concession stands, restrooms, a scoreboard. Really?
Painting.
Oh, I haven't even gotten to the maintenance.
And I don't think you're going to get an argument for us. I mean, we have not spent any cash in the money in the 2 years that I've been on the board. And I am fully supportive of developing some firm policy around how that is being used. I mean, obviously there's an intention behind that money. So yeah, I don't, you're not getting objection from me or anybody else on the board.
I'll just call it like it is, and how I've discussed it is, I think Dr. Foster was a runaway superintendent that was not governed by the board. How else did it get spent? And as I said, you guys were not on the board at the time.
Yeah. So our best mechanism for ensuring that doesn't happen in the future is through the board policy process, because that's the thing that outlives anybody sitting at this table. It is effective, it's enforced, and it's difficult to change. So honestly, I would welcome a conversation about what that policy might look like, what that might look like, for you all. I mean, obviously, cash in lieu is money, paid for new houses to make sure that we have adequate schools to meet the families that populate those new houses. And so, I know Jeff has looked up some other agreements that other districts have used that I think are very effective. I think you will find it very, I think you'll find us very open to that conversation and desire. I would like to see that in place.
I will tell you that my intention, you'll see further on our agenda, was to make a proposal to our board in the discussion. I'll propose it now, so they have time to think about it before we get to that. Is after the vote on the cash in lieu, our attorney's done quite a bit of research into options. The one that I haven't discussed with my fellow board members is the fact that I think a good way, an expedient way to go forward is a new IGA, simply because, as Trustee Meisner pointed out, we have building on the books, and I don't want to lose that cash in lieu money. But by the same token, I think that Milliken needs to take a much firmer stance, and any spending needs to be agreed upon with the board, and it needs to be for Milliken. I'm just tired of seeing the money leave Milliken and support other communities. I did get Mr. Everest. Thank you very much. And I do apologize. I didn't realize this was in my inbox, but I must say you've been very expedient in answering our questions, and they've been well answered, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. But you can see here, cash in lieu for 2018-19, $195,000 from Milliken and $34,000 from Johnstown. So, I do expect the funds to be spent here, and I expect some of them to be spent on charter schools, because that's what we're hearing from the community they want. What is your feeling about charter schools?
Like in general?
In general, for Milliken.
Well, I think in the state of Colorado, charter schools are a healthy part of any, school ecosystem.
That's an evasive answer. It is.
Okay. I don't know.
What do you think about charter schools in Milliken? Yes or no?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because when you guys were dealing with Civica in the work session, Michael Wales told Civica, I'm probably the only friend you've got on this side of the table, and not one of you spoke up and said, oh no, I support Civica, I want Civica in town. So did you want Civica or not?
Okay. I mean, in all fairness, that was not me making an accusation to anybody else.
Okay, because it didn't seem like it. And so we're wondering, is this going to be a fight that we're going to fight every time we want a charter school in town?
And I just want to point out too, we as the board here had requested for you guys to sit with us about Civica in February, and you denied us. So it's kind of a slap in the face when we want to talk to you about something, and then you're asking us to talk to you in something in return. And secondly, I want to bring up is that we had submitted a pull request for reports that we're supposed to receive annually, and you billed us for it. I'd like to know if you guys are going to give us a refund for it.
As far as the meeting in February, the way that was presented to me was that that was going to be to discuss the charter contract. We already had a contract with Civica at the charter school at the time. So as I explained to Mayor Austin, there really was nothing, unless the board of the trustees were acting on behalf of the Civica as an agent, there was really nothing more for the Board of Education to discuss regarding. Because we had already approved, we had approved their charter. We have a contract with them. The last work session we had that Mayor Austin referred to was Civica's contract with their academic provider. Am I saying that right? Yeah. And so that was, it was never intended to be a slap in the face. There was really nothing for the Board of Education to discuss on the matter because we had already ruled that we'd already granted the charter or approved the charter, and we already had a contract in place. And so there really was nothing more. It would have been a moot point for us to have a meeting.
So you're not opposed to charter schools? And you say that a middle school is still in the plans for Milliken. Even if you get the property, how are you going to finance putting the building up? Last time you told me it would be about 20 million or so for a middle school. Is that still
no.
approximately how much?
No, I know. A middle school right now would be around 40, 45 million. That's what the
So
2019 proposal had the middle school here for. But yes, demographics wise, we're currently, I believe, a little over 800 students in the current Milliken Middle School. We're looking at the program as we convert the Roosevelt High School into a middle school, that it would be roughly 900 students. And so you can see very clearly that we're going to be pushed at a middle school level from a demographic standpoint fairly quickly. The high school is currently at 1,000 students, and it's being designed optimally at 1,300. It can accommodate up to 1,580 students. But we do see pushes from a demographic in our master plan at the elementary and middle school level, even with this bond. We have a lot of growth that's happening in the area. Absolutely, as you pointed out, with the houses and the rest coming into the community.
So how would you put up the building? Where's the money going to come
It
from?
would be a bond. That's how school construction is funded in Colorado. And it'll go to the voters, and the voters will either support it or not.
I don't think the voters are going to support it in 10 years. Probably not even in 20 years. They got stung so hard. We have so many people in Milliken between the 45 mils that they're paying on the metro district, now what they're paying on the school, and then the town mills, they're tapped out on taxes. And in 10 years, they're still going to be paying on this bond. So the chances that they're going to say, yes, raise my taxes again. So what are you going to do?
So the board at that time, because none of us could be here, will need your support to pass that bond.
I won't
You
ask my
can't.
citizens that.
You don't ask them to put a new school up in Milliken?
I'm not asking, I'm not going to tax my citizens
Then why are we
more than
here?
they've already been taxed.
I would hope. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, obviously, if we're in a position to need middle schools because there's been growth in the community, if there's growth in the community, more houses in the community, then how much each individual household is paying for the current funds will go down.
But
So you know,
here's the other thing. You look at the building that Johnstown's about to do, their voters outnumber our voters. So even if Milliken voted 100% for it, why is Johnstown, who has a brand new high school, a completely renovated middle school, and the two newest elementary schools at that time, going to vote to raise their taxes to put a school in Milliken?
They're
well,
not.
all the students, we still only have one middle school. So all the students will still be dealing with it. If we're at the point where we're asking for another one, it's because the one we have is either at capacity or beyond capacity. That's going to affect everybody in the district. Everybody in the district is going to be impacted by that. And we'll see that. At which point, you know, it's in everybody's best interest. And that's the case that I would make. And it's the case I hope we would all make at that time, that it's going to be in everybody's best interest to, you know, create a second middle school to basically reduce the capacity of the places. We wouldn't obviously propose a second middle school until the one we have is at capacity, which I think in 10 years we are going to be, if not there, past it. And that's pain everybody's gonna feel, because we only have one. So I would hope in the same way that people, responded to the crowding at high school or all the other schools, is that they would support it. And
I
I
think
don't-
you're understanding what I'm saying. People are tapped out on taxes. They're not going to vote to raise their taxes when a lot of people right now are struggling to make their house payment. The house payments went up enough that they're like, I gotta take a second job. They're struggling. And in 10 years, they're still gonna be paying on this $149 million bond.
And sending their kids to Johnstown.
Like I said, I mean, I think at that point, the hope, the expectation is that the amount the individual taxpayer will actually go down as more housing is brought on board, right? And that's just kind of how bonds work. So, I mean,
So why did we wait until after 5A and 5B were passed to then decide where, it seems very ironic that this kind of got delayed and delayed to the point to where our community voted for this with the expectation that we would have a middle or have a high school, within proximity of both communities. And instead the high school is put further away from our town. That's like for the people who pay money and supported this with hopes of a new high school and kind of excited about it, then basically got backhand in the face as you put it further away from our town.
So at the time of the election, we had identified the two sites. So there shouldn't have been any confusion that, I mean, there was either the site at Mount Holdings or there was a site at Whitehall. And so that, we never changed that at all.
That was the carrot.
Yeah.
And then we got slapped in the butt because you guys chose Johnstown. Whereas our site would have been a heck of a lot better, less traffic. You're gonna have kids killed at Highway 60 coming off 13. You mark my words.
Well, and that was part of it, we did an extensive analytical search or
And
discussion
you didn't
about.
think it through.
Well,
You guys knew where you were gonna put that high school before we ever went to the vote. And don't say you didn't. I've lived in Milliken and dealt with Johnstown for enough years that I know that Johnstown lies.
All right, let's talk about you said in 20 years, there's gonna be another high school, but it's gonna go up on 54 approximately? Was that what you were telling me? Someplace north? No?
I don't
Not
think
another
our crystal
high
ball
school?
is out that far yet.
Yeah.
We have not, the district has not secured any land for a high school or another middle school, or even, I think, in the master planning, Lot Holdings had identified several sites for future schools as their residential areas built out. I believe that the development, now I'm blanking out on it, in Berthoud, that you think's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Mr. Wilson Ranch has an elementary school site set aside. I believe that Apex Development on 257 and 34 had at least a dedicated elementary site, potentially a middle school site that they're submitting in their planning review to the city of Greeley. But I'm not aware of any high school sites that are currently identified.
So there will be no second high school site?
There will be a second high school site at some point as this community grows. I can promise you that. And the pains that you're dealing with are the same that other communities around you have felt and dealt with. I think back to the Windsor Severance community and very similar conversations about why have I been paying forever to put schools in Windsor? And the time came around as Severance grew. The middle school, the elementary, and the high school are now in Severance. It's not easy at this point, but the decisions, I believe, I think obviously there's trust and other issues, but it has been analytical. It has been a matrix that the board has gone through. There have been, I hope, evidently not transparent enough, but decisions about where 5J can best serve the entire community. And whatever, and I'm stepping out of my role here, but whatever comes out of this, Well, 5J and Milliken and Johnstown and Berthoud and Greeley are intertwined. Sorry.
I'd like to ask a question, and I think it's probably been on most of the board's mind. When you think of schools, when you move into a community, and especially for young children, you've got your neighborhood schools. From what I'm understanding is you're going to take some of these young children, put them on a bus for at least a half an hour with all the stops, and send them to another community. That's not a neighborhood school. I doubt very many people grew up with having to travel that far to go to school when you're a kindergartner or first grader. So when you were planning all this, knowing that it's the elementary and the middle school, why didn't you plan on another elementary school in Milliken to serve the needs here? There's only been the one in the 22 years that I've been in here, and our growth has more than doubled. And now you're going to take, which wasn't indicated on 5A or 5B, I'm not sure which, that you were going to do renovations to Milliken Middle School. And nowhere did you say that you were going to take all those students once the renovations are done at the high school and move them all there. Now you're taking some of the young children whose parents bought their home in our community, sending them to the next community, and now we're going to take all these middle school kids and send them there as well. That does not make sense to me whatsoever. As a parent, as a grandparent, there's no common sense. So I'd like to understand where those decisions came from. And I don't know if the rest of the board, this is between the two of you, but.
That was next on my list, Cheryl, so you've stated it very well.
I just want to say, I grew up here. I went kindergarten through 9th grade in Wellberry 5J. And we did bus that far. We had kindergarten through 2nd grade at MES. And if you lived anywhere here in Milliken, you walked, you didn't ride a bus. I lived right here on Francis, and I walked to MES. And then and the Johnstown kids bused here. And then 3rd through 5th grade, I bused to Johnstown. So,
okay, but we're not as rural anymore.
No, but
all the time.
That's correct. You're not, but we used to bus that for young kids.
So
So I'm trying to minimize that a little more.
My question is this, KQA. I think we've been very public in our statement about the fact that it is attached to Sappington Park. And I'm more than willing to put before our board a vote to put it on the ballot to give property over to KQA to allow them to expand, but you've got them locked down with your contract and only busing in 400 kids. Is there a problem with putting in modular units at KQA and expand that as well so we don't have to bus the kids over? Or is that so far out of your plan?
Or adding on to Milliken Elementary.
Well, so yeah, let me.
There you go.
Yeah, so let me address a couple of different things here real quick. So part of that master plan, if you remember the way that the bond in 2019 was structured, was that we would build a new middle school in Milliken. We take the current Milliken Middle School and begin the process of converting that into a second elementary school. That is still part of the plan. So as things have gotten rearranged, Milliken Middle School, as we currently know it, as it's planned right now, would become the site for a second elementary school in Milliken. But it's, I mean, really for us, I mean, as a school district, we're kind of in dire straits. I mean, I don't think there's any illusions that we're way behind on where we should be with facilities. And right now we're just trying to catch up. And you made mention to a previous administration, some of the financial decisions that were made or not made in the case of our facilities. And so we're really in a fix. So as far as having bus kids to Pioneer Ridge out of Milliken, it is simply because we do not have space. And we're trying to cover as many bases. It's almost like a game of whack-a-mole right now for us. We're trying to hit everything we can and maximize what we were able to get out of that bond. But Milliken Middle School is
slated as a site for, say, an elementary school in Milton.
But I guess my question is, while you were doing this, you already knew that there was too many young children in this community to be served at Milliken Elementary School. So within this bond, why wasn't it already determined to add on to expand Milliken Elementary School?
It's always been a discussion. Part of it is.
Discussions.
I don't know, yeah. But again, like I said, we are kind of putting the whack-a-mole game.
There is funds in Milliken, there is funds in this bond for Milliken Elementary. And now, for us, there's a staging issue. The first two things that we had to get done and get moving were the new construction on new thing, because that has the largest lead time. It just has to, you just got to do that first, because you just got to get those projects moving. So that's what we've done. What we haven't gotten to yet, which, and honestly, this conversation is really helpful for, help us identify some priorities around, is the work that will be done at Milliken Elementary, and what the priorities are for the work done at Milliken Elementary with the money, with the bond money out of this current bond, that is available to that. So, and, I will tell you that one of the things that I've been publicly outspoken about is, there's also the conversation about bond premium and these other sources of funding we have, and where's the priority for those. So for me, and I'm on record many times, is, the priority for me on that would be to do more, either more at Milliken Elementary or, come out what that plan is. So the challenge that we have right now is we don't know how big a pot of money that's going to be until we basically figured out what we have to spend on these first two projects, because we have to fulfill our commitment to the voters. We're going to do what we said we were going to do. And then we got to see what there may be, what savings there may be there, what we might be able to retain from the bond premium, and then also what additional grant monies that might be available. So it's not really possible for us to say what the scope of work is going to be at Milliken Elementary and Milliken Middle School, because we don't yet know how big a pot of money that's going to be for us to do. If we can do more, we will do more. And I think Director Sassano is on record with me to say that is the biggest priority, because right now the worst building in the district is Lefford. It's the one in the worst amount of shape. It's the one that had to be done first. Okay, the next building that absolutely has to be addressed in some sort of way is Milliken Elementary, and Milliken Middle. So part of this is the conversation that's helpful for me, for you all, that I'm hearing from you all, is I'm hearing a strong value on part of the Milliken community to find a way to expand the student population at Milliken Elementary that would require us to do less busing. Right. So this idea of wanting to keep the kids together and really kind of keep that as a neighborhood school. So that's good, because eventually we're going to end up with some trade-offs and like, okay, do we build more space? Do we build a STEM lab? You eventually end up driving this guy nuts by having to have those conversations. So I think if you guys can help us inform those decisions and kind of help understand what your strong values is around that would be good. I'm hoping we can move into that conversation in the fall. Because by that point, we should have the scope locked on the high school, the scope locked on Elwell, and then have a really decent idea of how much money we're playing with as far as how much work we can do. And then we have to address those two properties and go and really do some deep assessments in the Milliken Elementary and Milliken Middle, say what's worth saving, what isn't, what gives us the highest capacity. Many ideas have been floated, and I think we would be very interested to hear your thoughts about what your priorities would be for those two properties. Do we invest all in one and abandon one? Do we invest in both? None of that has been decided, because I don't know the amount of resources we're going to have to bring, other than we will bring as much as we can.
I don't want to see our children bust out of the community.
Okay, that's really good.
That's a high priority, because I think the money can be better spent expanding schools. I hear from a large number of parents, they like the idea of charter schools. One reason why, kids all wear uniforms. So it takes this prestige on name brand stuff out, reduces some of the bullying and that kind of thing. So
we just had this conversation
this morning.
I'm not leading that, but if the parents want to get together in a district and ask for district-wide school board, uniforms, you wouldn't get an argument from me.
Well, I think some of this is important. It's
Absolutely
just gone the bullying has gone way too far and in many different areas. So, and the other thing is finding ways to expand without tapping the tax dollars because they are tapped out.
Yeah.
So if there is property and really KQA feeds into Civica and I know that charter schools have a lottery. And I'm always like, I test Matt's patience on trailblazing. I know that charter schools have a lottery. But I think we can make a strong argument for why a charter school in either Milliken, or even if there was a charter school in Johnstown, why they should have a higher population of children from that community, because it's those taxpayers that are paying for the water, the sewer lines, the maintenance, the roads, and that sort of thing. And is there any precedence on that, do you know?
I don't, and you mentioned it to me, I am gonna reach out to some folks, at, the Colorado Association of School Boards and see what they have to say about it, but, I.
Because let's face it, you've got a child coming from need,
It's a
you're
solid
getting,
argument.
well, I'm sorry?
It's a solid argument. That
Yeah, you're getting the PPR for that child, but our roads are still being used to get that child to school, and the toilets have to flush, and they need water to drink, and all the other services that get provided. So,
I think we're open to pretty much hearing anything and exploring, whatever those possibilities are. Our challenge is we want to do, we want to do high quality and thoughtful work.
Okay.
We don't want to do things rash. So we have a plan, and we want you guys to we want everybody in the district to have access to the best schools they can. And certainly we want that for the folks here too. So I think my hope would be, and the nice thing is we've got kind of a built-in liaison here with Peggy, especially once we start the conversations about getting down to brass tacks about what, how we are going to allocate dollars to, and how that's going to work with Milliken. I think we're trying to keep an open mind and not lock ourselves into any one particular idea, because it could be that there's something we haven't thought of yet for that might become available because we have additional funds through either savings at the high school or through bond premium. So I don't want to give you like, we're going to do this, because we might be able to do more. And if we can do more, I want to do more.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. You guys have numbers on the high school?
Yes. What number?
Construction numbers.
Yes, sir. We have a schematic design that's being delivered to the board as a presentation next Wednesday afternoon. I sat in a review meeting today, and tomorrow morning we're going over the construction estimates.
Food for thought.
Yes, sir.
I hear yesterday they're talking that building materials are gonna go up another 30% by the end of the year. Is that factored into your numbers, or is that gonna short everybody in this whole project?
No, we believe we have adequate contingency to make sure that we deliver the programs. And we've done a design build delivery model for the high school that's allowed us to partner with key subcontractor trades. But you are absolutely right, sir. We are facing some significant inflationary pressures. And more importantly, we're facing shortages in products.
Exactly.
So that's.
Well, then again, I bring that up because you're talking about any excess funds might be going to the Milliken Elementary School. So more likely that's going to get nixed if the funds are short for the high school. So am I correct in that statement?
We have 3 levels of contingency. And so there are project level contingencies in construction within the contractor's numbers. There is a project specific level contingency for each job. And then there's what we call the programmatic level contingency, which is the bond premium, interest earnings, or other funds that come in. Those programmatic level contingencies in the bond are currently unallocated. Okay? Within the bond premium that was estimated, we'd actually accounted for roughly $12 million. We received a little over $20 million in bond premium. Because the bad side, the good side and the bad side of what's happened in our economy over the last year with COVID is that people pulled back from passing bonds. And so there weren't many municipal bonds on the street. So those that were on the street got priced where they got additional funds. That premium is additional generated, it does not increase taxes. But yes, sir, we are very concerned. I'm very concerned. I had a full head of hair before all of this happened.
Yeah, I just read a deal where a contractor in Utah canceled all contracts yesterday because they can't meet they can't get the materials, they can't get appliances, they can't get the numbers to meet where the contract was made back in November.
Yep. Our specific example, and where we thought where the stress level ratcheted up here for the school board and for us, is that we have, schools are not like other construction projects. We have set completion dates. Buses roll, kids show up on those days. So we don't get to necessarily flex our completion dates. Well, we found out that metal joist and deck that was going to be pulled in for the elementary school, the Elwell Elementary School that replaces Letford, was on an 8 to 10 month lead time, where it is typically 4 months. You can't finish a job in the 12 months that we have with that lead time. And so we were having to contemplate the impact of potentially delaying the opening of Elwell. Our contractor and our team were able to find a slot within the fabrication schedule, and we jumped, and because of our contract delivery models, we locked that in. And so we're on our original schedule. But Amazon, FedEx delivery centers, COVID, they have bought out the production of long span metal joist and roof deck for the remaining year of 2021. That doesn't talk about the impact of wood or hurricanes and other things, but I'm rambling. We have contingencies. There's a reason for those contingencies, and it's first and foremost to deliver to the community what we promised. What we also promised very clearly was $5 million towards the Milliken Middle School, $5.5 million at Milliken Elementary School for needed renovation and updates. Program goals for those two campuses are a little bit of a question because of growth. When you build an elementary school, you want 10 acres for an elementary of approximately 600 kids. The current Milliken Elementary School is a little over 5 acres. So the master plan that President Wales kind of referenced looked at how we could use the facilities and use them wisely. And it talked about a primary campus. This has not been decided upon, but it talked about maybe a primary model of a PK2 on that site, and then using the 8.7 acres that is at Milliken Middle School to be an elementary in the 3-5 range. And that would give you the equivalent capacity of 2 elementaries. You mentioned modulars, whether they be at KQA or elsewhere. They really are the silver bullet for school districts as they face growth before they get enough assessed value within the community to minimize the tax impact and get support for community for a bond. And so somebody who has 8th grade capacity on a campus in a K-8 might be something that RE5 really looks hard at in helping bridge that.
I have a question for Mr. Everest. So on these modulars, we are going a little bit of overtime. If we have to start our board meeting a little bit late, we will. On these modulars, I see that there were some that were leased. Seems like a very high price. It was like over $2 million. And yet I know that Civica was looking at starting out with buying 8 classrooms for $1 million. In your estimation, can the school district do a better job with purchasing modulars, and then when you're done with them, find a buyer for those in your experience, or do you not have experience in that area?
All of the modular purchases that 5J has done was, before my time. I don't really have a lot of experience with that. Just with what I've, seen with the administration, that it's, that that we are price sensitive, let's say, and, we don't waste resources.
I know they don't have a lot of value when you're done, but I would think that like some of the larger towns that have homeless populations, they could be repurposed for that, something like that.
Mayor Austin, if I could
Yeah.
interject here, because I do have knowledge of the modulars
Oh.
here in the district. And exactly what you were describing is what happened and the rest. So the modulars that were placed at Milliken Middle School, Milliken Elementary, and Pioneer Ridge Elementary were actually modulars that were finished at the end of a bond from Eagle County School District, who actually got those modulars at the end of the time when their bond was finished from Weld and Fort Lupton. And so those modulars have actually made them around 3 different school districts. In fact, 4. The modulars from Eagle also went to Salida School District. And what happens is the communities and the school districts get together and say, I've built my new schools, I don't need these now. And so I will give these to you, Weld RE5J, if you pay to remove them from our site. And so for the modulars, those 4, that's exactly what we did, as we're kind of paying it forward from one district to the other. The other element for the modulars, and I'm not sure the price tag, but the modulars that are in front of Roosevelt High School right now, the 4-plex that was in, that's actually part of the modular complex that was at Windsor High School when Windsor High School had its expansion and renovation in their 2016 bond. And so all of those have been kind of handed down. We even were donated the ramps and stairs from RE4 on that.
So that was going to be my next question is, can any of those in your renovation of Roosevelt High School into the middle school, are you planning on repurposing those to maybe one of our schools?
I would suggest absolutely, because the purpose of this bond, we won't need the modular at Roosevelt, and we won't need the modulars at Milliken Elementary, Milliken Middle, or at Pioneer Ridge. So we've got that capacity coming forward. So the challenge is it's 2 years. It's 2 years out.
And I've always been, and I've taken a lot of flack from the board and the administration of that. I've been a firm proponent of hanging on to the modulars. I'm not so much one paying for it, because I think, we may have use for them, and I think that's what we're getting at here. I know we are running a little over. One of the things I wanted to say before we left was, and I've talked with you about this. I've talked with Director/Board of Trustee Wakeman. Is I really want us to get in a routine where the Board of Education is meeting on a regular basis with the Board of Trustees of Milliken. And set that habit and set that precedent for future boards moving forward. I don't know if that was something that was done previously, but I think in all of this, there has been a lack of communication, and I think I would welcome the opportunity to learn more about what you guys have going on, what developments you guys are seeing, so that helps us plan, and vice versa. That we can help, based on some of the demographic numbers that we're seeing, how do we work together? Not just today and tomorrow, but 20 years from now.
Do you guys meet with other towns?
We don't, and that's we want to start it with all of them, because I think it's important. As Mr. Chamberlain said, it's Milliken, it's Johnstown, it's Greeley, it's Berthoud. And this area is just going to continue to grow, and we need to be aware of what's going on. You need to be aware of what we've got going on, and I think it'll just set a nice precedent moving forward for future boards on both sides to say, hey, this is something we do twice a year or every quarter. We just sit down with our school board, and we sit down with our town boards of trustees, and we talk about everything that's going on.
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the cash in lieu is something you can maybe legitimately point back to a previous board and previous whoever. But I think you guys have set yourself at a very stark disadvantage with our community in just simple trustworthiness, because you put forth this 5A, 5B, held it out there as, well, we could choose your community, and then wait until they vote on it. And this is not just this is like, I've talked to a number of people in our community, and they feel not just backhanded, but lied to by you guys, in the sense that you had in your mind, whether they can prove it or not, whether I can prove it or not, doesn't matter. You had in your mind you were going to do it, but you were waiting until after the 5A, 5B got approved before you actually put the stamp on it. And that doesn't, it's not just the school that we're talking about. With a high school particularly comes other commerce, restaurants, stores, clothing stores, you know, sports venues bring other things. Our community and people I've talked to specifically that voted for it with the anticipation that we would get a high school, at least in some proximity to our town, not further away. And that would bring to our community commerce that Milliken needs to grow and thrive and survive. Now, they put this money out with the expectation of at least some consideration. And it's seemingly, you took it even further away from our town, bringing commerce further away from us. Not a happy medium, not a, here, I'll meet you halfway. It's further away, further diminishing our town. And meanwhile saying, thank you very much for your money. We're going to go over here. So our town, I believe you have a big defense to an obstacle to overcome in trustworthiness. You can make all these promises looking forward, and we can talk all day long about things you're going to do here and things you're going to do and thinking all we're going to do, but you didn't. And you can't point the finger at another board. That's you guys. You voted on the location. So there's no defense going like this. Our town, our community wants answers from you guys as to why not only did you take the money away, but you further hurt our community in the economics of it, not just the school, not just the distance of travel.
Okay.
I just had a quick question. I know you spoke about it earlier regarding busing. How does that work? I mean, how does that work with KQA? How it works with Civica?
Oh, boy.
Well, you just have to get to school.
Absolutely, yeah. So, we should have bought our transportation.
Yeah.
Director with us.
Yeah.
It's, we will have to do that.
Is that a consideration that you looked at? And sort of, I think what I heard is it's limited to KQA, but I don't know.
So, well, yeah, KQA is they have an enrollment cap. And it was, again, I apologize as well, because some of this predates me. But it was based on transportation, the feasibility of transportation.
And then now we have a new school in town,
Yep.
So, keeps more cars off the roads, people
Absolutely.
running around, and keeps kids all together. So just curious, as the school board, if you spoke to regarding transportation.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'd be looking for probably a follow-up meeting in July to hear about the transportation before the school starts.
We can do that.
And see where we're at with which kids are going to which school and what decisions have been made.
Okay.
So can we tag that for a July meeting?
Absolutely. And can I just work with you and try to figure out a date, and then we can filter that back to our respective members?
That would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any final comments, questions, concerns?
Guys, thank you for having us.
Thanks for your time.
Very
Thank you
helpful.
for at least coming out. I know that this was a difficult meeting, but I appreciate you coming out.
Let's open it up.